Welcome back to another episode of Mastering Master Mode. And if you saw our latest community post, you'll know that this is actually the last episode of the series. We'll start off this finale by taking on the Lunatic Cultist again. You may remember that this guy absolutely creamed me last time I tried to fight him, but this time it's gonna go much better. I'm using the newly acquired Razor Pine since I had a ton of success with it against Duke Fishron, and it deals so much damage so fast that it's just a great weapon overall. Other than that, not much has changed. I'm still using the same basic strategy of circling around the Lunatic Cultist to avoid most of its attacks, and then taking my time and really figuring out which cultist is the real one when he does the summoning circle. Hitting the wrong one like I do here at the end causes a phantasmal dragon to spawn, and that thing does a ton of damage, so I really want to avoid hitting the wrong Lunatic Cultist. Defeating the cultist gets me the achievement Obsessive Devotion. Now, if you've ever played Terraria, you'll know that this part that comes directly after the Lunatic Cultist is one of the worst parts in the entire game. Basically what happens is 4 pillars spawn across the entirety of the map, and you have to take out 100 enemies to lower their shield before you can destroy the pillars. Destroying each of these pillars is required to take on the final boss of the game, the Moon Lord. Of course, since this is to get to the final boss of the game, these enemies are absurdly tough. They deal absolutely massive amounts of damage to me, and I just cannot heal up fast enough to stay alive. I take death after death after death after death in these events. Even after I've taken down the shield on a pillar and I'm just trying to take it out, more enemies continue to spawn and I just continue to die. The 4 pillars each represent one of the main classes in the game. There's the Solar Pillar for melee, the Vortex Pillar for range, the Stardust Pillar for summoner, and finally the Nebula Pillar for magic. Of course, since this is a mage playthrough, the pillar that I'm most interested in taking out is the Nebula Pillar. The Nebula Pillar also happens to be one of the more annoying pillars to take out, although not necessarily one of the hardest. The hardest pillar probably goes to the Solar Pillar, as those enemies deal just insane amounts of damage. After taking so many deaths in the process, I'm finally able to take out the shield on all 4 pillars and then take them down themselves, giving me the achievement Star Destroyer and prompting the Moon Lord to spawn. The Moon Lord is the final boss in the game, and after defeating all 4 pillars, you have about 1 minute to prepare for one of the hardest fights in the entire game. And just like that, we're on the final boss of the game. This guy throws so many attacks at you, it is definitely hard to see what's going on and what you need to dodge. The Moon Lord has 2 different phases. The first phase, it's got 3 eyeballs, 1 on each of its hands and 1 on the top of its head, and you need to take out all 3 of those eyeballs before you unlock stage 2, where you have to take out the Moon Lord's core, which is in its chest. All of the eyeballs act and attack separately from each other, so it's very easy to be dodging one attack from one eyeball and then get hit by another one because it was attacking a different attack at the same time. The eye in the Moon Lord's forehead is closed for the most part, but when it opens up, you've got just a few seconds to react because a giant laser is going to sweep across about half of the screen, and you need to be able to swap to the other side as quick as possible. Not having enough vertical or horizontal movement speed can lead to your death almost instantly, as showcased here when I take almost 400 damage from 1 laser beam attack. When you defeat a pillar in the Celestial Pillars event, it gives you fragments of its respective type: Solar, Vortex, Nebula, or Stardust. Combining a bunch of these fragments together allows you to craft the spawn item for the Moon Lord, so you don't have to go through that event every time you want to take on the Moon Lord. However, the pillars drop only a finite number of the fragments, so you can only craft a couple spawners each time, and that'll be less on the first time you defeat the pillars because you'll want to craft the weapons of your respective class. My second attempt at the Moon Lord fight does not go much better when I take a death to the same phantasmal death ray as the first time. After my second death to the Moon Lord, I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do, so I ended up dying to the Empress of Light. Somehow I died to the Destroyer of Worlds, I don't even know how. I died to the Moon Lord for a 3rd time, and then I died to the Empress of Light for a 2nd time this episode. I'm struggling to get anything going at this point, and I've used my last summoning item for the Moonlord, so the next time I want to fight him, I have to go through the pillar event again, and you saw how well that went the first time. Defeating the Empress of Light grants me an accessory that grants me infinite flight. I no longer run out of flight time with my wings, which will help a ton in my fight against the Moonlord. A lot of the times I take damage, it's because I've run out of flight time on my wings, and I end up falling into some projectile somewhere. Luckily for me and for my sanity, my third fight against the Empress of Light this episode goes much better than the last ones. I start off the fight using the Spectre Mask to deal massive amounts of damage with my new Nebula Blaze weapon, which is one of the weapons you get from the Nebula Pillar, and it deals a bunch of damage and has some homing properties to it. And then when I get super low on health, I manage to switch over to the Spectre Hood quickly enough to heal up all of the damage that the Empress of Light dealt to me, and then I quickly take her out, earning myself the achievement Fey Layer. I then noticed that I had a spare truffle worm, so I decided to take on Duke Fishron again, and of course I lose. I then summoned the Frost Moon event because I hadn't had enough pain in this episode yet. I needed to top it all off with several deaths to Santa tanks and evil Christmas trees. After the Frost Moon event, I'm headed back to the Lunatic Cultist because I have to respawn the pillars again, which means I have to take out the Cultist again. But of course that goes poorly and I take a death to the Cultist. But when I do manage to get the pillars spawned again, it is just more death. I am dying non-stop. It doesn't matter which pillar it is. I cannot take out these pillars without dying at least once. One nice thing about defeating the Moonlord, other than the fact that it's the last boss of the game, is if you need to take on these pillars again, you only have to take out 50 enemies rather than 100 to lower the shield on the pillars. That would have been really helpful in this scenario, but having to take out 100 enemies is just brutal. After finally taking out the 4 pillars again, I get another shot at the Moonlord. However, having infinite flight and not being used to it ended up being a little bit more of a burden to me because I ended up flying all the way to the top of my world and not being able to go any higher and above the Moonlord, and I took a death due to that. And on the second attempt of this set of attempts, I end up bonking my head on the ceiling of the world and falling directly into the death laser on the Moonlord's top eyeball. And on my third attempt, I bonk my head into a cloud and fall into more projectiles spawned by the Moonlord. Of course, that being my third attempt means I ran out of spawners for the Moonlord, so I have to take on the Celestial Pillars again. That means I have to take out the Lunatic Cultist again, and of course I die to him on my first attempt. And you know how the rest of the pillars goes, which is to say death, 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 death. In the middle of this Celestial Pillars event, I decided to take out the cloud that I bonked my head on last time so that that never happens again, and we'll see if that helps me in the next fight. After removing the cloud, we go back to our regularly scheduled program of dying over and over again before we finally spawn in the Moonlord again, only to die very quickly to its phantasmal death ray. Attempt 2 and 3 go much the same way, although instead of a phantasmal death ray, I die to some other phantasmal projectile. Luckily for me, I was able to get enough fragments from the pillars to be able to spawn 4 Moonlords rather than just 3, and that does include the one that you automatically get spawned after the end of the event. Giving me 4 tries rather than 3 was the Moonlord's biggest mistake, because this time is the one I can feel it. I've got a new strategy, and it involves riding on my spooky tree, which can actually outrun the Moonlord. Using this strategy is super helpful for 2 reasons. The first being that the Moonlord's lasers actually have a maximum distance, and if you're far enough away, they will just kind of miss you, and you don't even have to try and dodge vertically. The second reason is the Moonlord has a tongue that reaches out and grabs you. If the tongue grabs you, it stops you from being able to get any healing properties from anything other than a health potion. That means if the tongue grabs me, my Spectre Hood is completely useless and I'll get no healing from it. While that does have a sort of benefit of forcing me to use the Spectre Mask for most of the fight to deal extra damage, it has the downside of not being able to heal up, which is obviously a huge problem when the boss can deal 400 plus damage in just a single attack. When I first start using the strategy of running away, I kind of forget that you can't actually despawn the Moonlord, so I'm scared to be running too far away, thinking that if I do, the Moonlord will despawn. However, that's actually not the case. Unlike with most bosses in the rest of the game, the Moonlord can't despawn. If you run too far away from it, it will actually just teleport to your location and continue attacking you. You can use this to your advantage by running away as fast as you can, having it spawn on you, but you're still already at top speed, so you just keep running. Other than the 2 main attacks I mentioned previously, most of the rest of the attacks will also just miss or are moving at a much slower rate because you're running very fast away from them, so they're a lot easier to dodge. Once I remembered that the Moonlord can't despawn, I'm just running as fast as I can to the left all the way to my dungeon where the sky bridge ends, and then all the way back to the right as fast as I can, where I run into a random wall on my sky bridge, which does stop my momentum, but at the same time, it does let me know that I'm nearing the end of the sky bridge. Every time the screen is flashing white, that's when the Moonlord is teleporting to my location because I've gotten too far away from it. Comparing this fight to all of the previous ones, you can see just how much less projectiles and lasers are on the screen doing the fight this way compared to no real strategy at all. Using my strategy of running away and being able to avoid all the projectiles that the Moonlord throws at me by just being too far away from them allows me to get the victory against the Moonlord and grants me 2 achievements: the Champion of Terraria for defeating the Moonlord and Slayer of Worlds for defeating every boss in Terraria. This strategy is so effective that on the very next Moonlord that I spawn, I'm able to get the victory again, even though I go down to just 50 health. The second Moonlord fight gave me the Last Prism, which is one of the best magic weapons in the entire game. I then went home and used the materials that you get from the Moonlord to craft myself the Nebula armor, which is the best magic armor set in the game. It doesn't have it sort of combines the 2 Spectre armor sets into one, where it gives you increased life regen and increased damage, but it also includes increased defense as well, so it is a bit better. Using my brand new Last Prism and armor set, I'm able to easily clear out the first 6 waves of the Old One's army and bring upon myself the last wave, which includes Betsy. Betsy is a flying dragon that deals a ton of damage, but luckily for me, she mostly focuses on the crystal, so I don't have to worry too much about her attacking me. Taking her out instantly clears the final wave of the Old One's army, which grants me the achievement Hero of Etheria. After that, it's back to the Frost Moon Pain and Death by Santa tanks, although I only take 1 death before I manage to make it all the way to wave 15, granting myself the achievement Ice Scream. Of course, I do take a few more deaths after that because after wave 15, it's basically just a boss rush. There's multiple Ice Queens, multiple Santa tanks, multiple Christmas trees, all attacking you all at once, and it is just chaos. There's no time to rest after the chaos, however, as the very next night, I summon the Pumpkin Moon. I do this because I need just a couple more swords to be able to craft the Zenith Sword, which is the best melee weapon in the game, and it comes with an achievement that I'm looking to grab. I need the Horseman's Blade from the Pumpkin, and while I do take a few deaths in the process, I managed to get the sword that I'm after. After making it to wave 15 in the Frost Moon event, there's a chance that the Frost Legion will spawn. This is an event very similar to the Goblin Invasion in both style and difficulty. This is a pre-hard mode event, and I have post-Moonlord weapons, so it is a cakewalk for me. Enemies die almost instantly and deal relatively no damage compared to all of the other enemies that I'm fighting at this point in the game. The reason this event happened so late for me is it's actually a seasonal event, and since it wasn't Christmas time when I was playing this, it couldn't spawn. However, making it to wave 15 in the Frost Moon event gives you a small time frame that this event can spawn. Finishing off the event gets you the achievement, Do You Want to Slay a Snowman? After that event, I'm taking on the Martian Invasion event because I need just one more sword, the Influx Waver, to get the Zenith Blade. I only die a couple times, and it was never to a UFO, although I did have to spawn 3 separate Martian Invasion events to actually get the blade that I was looking for. Once I got that blade, it was time to craft the Zenith, giving me the achievement Infinity +1 Sword. And as you can see, when I swing it, it's actually insane. It goes through walls, it's got infinite range, it is just the best weapon in the game, period. So if I was playing melee, this would be incredible. After crafting the sword, it's right back to the Celestial Pillars event, where I'm still taking deaths with post-Moonlord weapons and armor, but luckily it's only 2 during this event, since I only had to take out 50 enemies per pillar rather than the usual 100. I'm taking out the pillars because I need to fight the Moonlord a few more times in order to get the weapons and materials that I need for a couple more achievements. Using my strategy, I never lose to the Moonlord again. It is actually a super easy fight, especially now that I have even better weapons and armor. After my second Moonlord fight, I get the item I'm looking for, the Terrarian. This is the best yo-yo in the game, and it comes with the achievement Sick Throw. I then craft up a second post-Moonlord set of armor, the Summoner Armor, to give myself the achievement You and What Army for having the max number of summoned minions at one time. I then take a quick detour from my normal world, hop myself into a brand new world that I created with a seed, and get the achievement A Rare Realm for starting up a world using a world seed. I then hop back into my normal world, head over to my hollow desert, where I'm expecting to spend hours waiting for unicorns to spawn so that I can farm them for their blessed apple drop. It's a very rare drop, and I've been on and off searching for it since I've had the hollow in my world. I was not expecting to find it this fast. It took me a few seconds to realize it because I could not believe that the very first unicorn that I took out dropped the apple. This is another mount similar to the horse that I was using earlier, although this time it's a unicorn. I need this mount because I need to ride the unicorn and shoot a rainbow gun at the same time to earn myself the achievement Rainbows and Unicorns. The next achievement that I'm going for is the Great Slime Mitosis. You get this achievement by having all available slime pets at the same time in your world. The slime pet that I was trying to go for there was the Squire Slime. And for some reason, when I read how to get the Squire Slime on the wiki, I thought it said that I had to throw a copper helmet on a squirrel instead of a slime, which makes no sense on how you would get a slime pet, but I do eventually figure it out. While I was trying to throw the copper helmet onto the squirrel, for no reason, I'd spotted a golden bunny, and catching and cooking a golden critter gets you the achievement Feast of Midas. I then finally figured out that I needed to throw the helmet onto a slime rather than a squirrel, and I get the Squire Slime. I then take a sparkle slime balloon down to my shimmer biome where I throw it into the shimmer and out pops the Diva Slime. Then, while looking at my map and being completely distracted, I take a death to a jungle bat. Speaking of the jungle, that's where I'm headed next, as the last slime that I need is spawned by throwing purification powder onto a mystic frog. Mystic frogs are tiny creatures that spawn in the jungle and are very hard to see, but luckily I have the radar on and I can see when a mystic frog is spawned near me, and throwing purification powder on it grants me the achievement, the Great Slime Mitosis. I then head back down to the Shimmer biome to transform my Plantaminator into a terraformer so that I can begin the process of purifying my world. This is probably the second most grindy achievement in the game after doing all of the Angler's quests. I spend about 6 hours clearing out all the Hollowed, Corruption, and Crimson biome in my world, and after doing so, I talk to the Dryad, who grants me the achievement and good riddance. With that achievement out of the way, I'm setting my sights even grander and going for the achievement Heliophobia, where you trick gnomes into the sunlight, turning them into stone. This achievement ended up being rather difficult to get just because it's hard to get them to go where you want them to go, but after a few tries and accidentally killing a few of them, I managed to get the achievement. The last achievement that I'll be getting in this playthrough is Trout Monkey. You get Trout Monkey for completing 25 quests for the Angler, and seeing how long it took to just get 1/8 of the 200 quests that I need to do to get the final achievement for the Angler, I decided I can't be bothered to do that. That is such a huge time sink for very little payoff, and it would be rather boring to watch, and I made it even more difficult for myself by clearing out half of the biomes that I need in the world to even be able to do the quests. The Corruption, Hollowed, Crimson, and all of the underground variants of the 3. So with that, we come to the end of the episode and the end of the series. I hope you guys enjoyed this series as much as I did. I had a ton of fun creating this series for you guys, and I loved reading all of your comments every episode. It was a lot of fun for me to play through the game on both a higher difficulty than I normally play on and in a different playstyle. I almost never play as a mage because I think it's one of the weaker classes due to the fact that you have restrictions on your mana, and in Terraria at least, using mana potions causes your damage output to be less because you get potion sickness, but I can definitely see now that the mage is actually quite powerful. Thank you all so much for watching and supporting the entire series, and I will see you all on the next one.